That's the sound of the coffee pouring. Welcome to the Doctor's Brew. I'm your host, Dr. Abdulaziz Alkhayyat.
And I'm your co-host, Dr. Bassam AlMulla.
And with us today, fresh from the archives, Yousef Abu Ghazaleh.
Hello, it's weird to be on this side of things. I'm usually behind the camera and DB, especially before. So it's very foreign to me to be in front of the lights and the camera right now.
It's kind of weird, right?
A little bit. It's nice that I'm in familiar territory at least.
Thank you for hosting us here, by the way.
Of course.
So actually, I
The
don't,
lighting here is impeccable.
I don't want to speak on your behalf. Tell us, where are we, Yousef?
So we're in the archive room of the Kuwait Times right now. So you've got original copies of the newspaper from 1978 till 2013. You've got older ones at the Kuwait National Library open to the public. If anyone wants to go and see, for example, our archives from the 60s, you can go to the Kuwait National Library at any point, check them out for yourself. It's actually really cool because it's a window into our society from a very different time, very, very different time. And there's some headlines that we can get into in a little bit. And I actually have a present for you guys. Everyone that comes to the archive room gets two gifts, actually. The first one is what I'm about to give you. The second one I'll give you a bit later. But this one is a, unfortunately, non-original copy of our first edition ever of the Kuwait Times.
Okay.
So here you guys.
First edition.
Yeah.
Fire. Okay.
From what year was this? 1961.
1961, yeah.
Oh, it cost 30 fils.
30 fils, yeah, for inflation. That's actually not as cheap as I thought it would be.
Well, guys, look at this. Check this out.
Awesome. Nowadays, I think it's about 150 fils. So
It's fa-
times 5, yeah. And this was only 4 pages. The newspaper used to only be 4 pages.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is the first ever English language newspaper printed in Kuwait.
Wow.
Look, there's the crossword puzzles here.
Yeah, there's the games. There might be some hospital info in there, actually.
King Saud bought a comet?
Yeah. What? Okay. Got the money for it. I'd buy a comet.
You can buy a comet?
You can, yeah. You can buy a comet, stars. You can name them after people.
Are you going to buy a comet naming after me?
Maybe a small star. I don't know about a comment. Or small star.
Small star. You're already big enough of a star, so don't worry about it. Spoiling.
Look, there's ads here too.
So you guys, for our viewers, you must be confused. Why is the guest today not a healthcare professional? Why are we not in a DB sanctioned studio? I don't know how
Sanctioned is not the right word for it, I don't think.
but we are going to be talking a little bit about history today. So today we're going to be talking about, you know what? Hold up. Before I say the theme, let me make a point. Bassam, what was the first hospital in Kuwait?
I don't know.
There we go.
Is it here?
No, don't cheat.
Technical difficulty.
We're going to be talking about the history of medicine in Kuwait. So that's why we have Yousef, who I think is a great figure of just history in Kuwait, a big advocate for preserving history in Kuwait, hosting us here in Kuwait Times. We're going to be talking about the history of medicine in Kuwait, kind of past, present, and future. We're going to be doing our typical coffee, segments, but all this is going to be centered around healthcare. So don't worry if you think that we're going to be deviating too far. We're not deviating too far today. But yeah, how are we feeling about it, Yousef? We excited?
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to getting into it.
So I'm not going to deny you any further coffee.
Cute.
Now, right over here, we have your coffee order based off the AI response to your questions that we sent. We're going to get into those in a second.
Okay.
And then your preferred. Okay. So this is our first segment called What Coffee Are You? Second time we do this. So these are the questions we asked Yousef. Number 1, what is your favorite era of history? Number 2, what is your favorite treaty? And then number 3, what is your favorite political theorist? Typically, these are medical related, but we thought it would be unfair to ask Yousef what's his favorite scrubs.
Thank you. Although the DB scrubs that Bassam is repping would be my answer to that question. Nice.
That is.
Say, he knows how to speak talk. Do you remember your answers, by the way?
I do, yeah.
Cool. So run us through. What's your favorite era in history?
Probably the second half of the 20th century. That's what I answered on the form anyways, because there's a lot of things that sort of pertain to the time before it in terms of the world wars, but also that's really the crux of where you see our world as it is developed. And it's fascinating to also see the parallels between now and the first half of the 20th century. And those are an unfortunate indicator of how things might go in the second half of the 20th century, or 21st century, sorry. So we're sort of seeing that moment of, if history is not repeating itself, at least it's rhyming. And there's a lot of stuff in the future that we're at that tipping point. And if you look at history as an indicator, especially that part of history, you might get a lot of information that would be useful in the coming decades. That's really cool.
Do you think us as humans, do we have something called selective amnesia? when it comes to history, because history does tend to repeat itself, and we like to pretend that it didn't happen, or we like to chase the.
Fantastic point. Look, humans are blessed with long-term memory. Humanity is not. Okay, uh, because look at it in the lens of generations, right? 2 to 3 generations is about as long as humanity's memory collectively lasts. And so that's why you start to see now World War II was sort of the inflection point of what our modern world looks like. All of a sudden, as the last of that generation dies out and their lessons that they learned the hard way die out, the same way we repeat the same mistakes our parents make in their teenage years, their young adult years, humanity is now repeating those same mistakes. If you look at humanity as a person, we grew up, we died, and now we're a teenager again. And now we're sort of rebelling against the system that our parents left us, but we don't remember the reasons why that system was there in the first place.
So far, this is making you feel great.
Look, I'm not. The last question will be a bit more optimistic.
Okay, so number 2, what is your favorite treaty?
Yeah, this question caught me off guard. I can't lie. I love it. It's a very niche question, but I just wasn't expecting it.
Treaties. So outside of high school,
Dude, that was my reaction.
all these PTs and all this Versailles.
Versailles is a good one. Versailles is a very good one. My answer was one called the Treaty of Tordesillas. I can't remember when exactly that was signed, somewhere in the 1500s. But essentially, all it was church sanctioned splitting the world in half. Everything in South America to the west belonged to Spain. Everything to the east belonged to Portugal. So basically, 2 countries are like, yo, straight line down the world. This is yours, this is mine. It's like one of those rom-coms where they're like fighting and they tape the room down the middle, but with the world. And one of the countries was Portugal, some random country that nobody thinks about these days.
Yeah.
So it was a really, really strange treaty. And it just goes to show the mentality of some of those powers at the time, where it's like, we can just sort of do whatever we want as long as it's okay with the church.
Interesting.
That's where the quote comes from. History is written by the victors.
Facts. So, Yousef, question number 3. Who is your favorite political theorist?
I like this one. There was a few answers that went through my head, but the one I came up with was actually one I was showing to some family members yesterday, and he's one that's like almost a comic relief of political theorists. So this is a niche one. This is for any of my fellow politics and IR grads, someone called Slavoj Žižek.
We're just thinking a video where he is very fire.
Who's Subway?
If you see this man speak, he speaks like this, but also he's always adjusting his head. He's always like, just as soon as you think he has himself put together, something else falls out of place and he has to put it back. Very, very eccentric guy, but also the points he makes are very deep. I can't get into it right now because he's very famously like rabbit hole, rabbit hole, rabbit hole. But look him up. He's very much worth like a few minutes of your time.
I feel like being eccentric is part of being a genius. Every single genius always looks a little bit off.
Yeah. Actually, I was just watching a video of his today, an interview where he was talking about how he's more and more, as time goes on, he hates people. But he hates people equally.
Well, he's like, if you look him up, he's the quintessential like mountain man, like sitting on his porch with his shotgun, like ready to like fight anyone who tries to sell him something.
The more I know I grow up, the more I relate to this.
He's the Squidward of political theorists, basically.
So let's see what ChatGPT said, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the result of what came out, right? So we said that this is your preferred, and then that this is ChatGPT. So the result, based off of your answers, hot Spanish latte. I can see why you're laughing. Because first, sweet yet complex. It balances sweetness with bold coffee flavors, much like how the second half of the 20th century was a mix of turmoil and cultural shifts.
Jeez.
And Spanish influence. The Treaty of Tordesillas was a Spanish-Portuguese agreement, like, as just mentioned. And so obviously, like, Spanish.
Oh, I did myself nicely.
So it's the same be really
the coffee I would have ordered. So,
well, a lot of Spaniards would be offended by this because Spanish latte is not like, it's not Spanish. It just,
no, I apologize to any Spanish people right now. It's just it's so bad for you. It's so sweet, but I love it.
And then last thing, rich and layered. Similar to Zizek's deep and often controversial historical analyses and takes, this drink has depth and a mix of flavors. So this is your hot latte, and his preferred drink is a cold
Spanish latte.
I was hoping it was just the hot and cold. So
I feel like you should have just ordered one drink at this point. Okay, I guess hot first.
I mean, if you don't like it, the whole point is supposed to be that if you don't like it, we can give you your preferred. But I guess you just get two. So congrats.
So you just get a hot,
And a cold.
you actually get a cold and a little bit of a
I'll leave this for like
lukewarm.
product placement.
Oh, yeah. Oh, we're going to dive in now into our different talking points. Like I mentioned to you guys earlier, we're going to go kind of past, present, future. So talking a little bit about the past, you want to share with us a little bit about the origins of like medicine in Kuwait? And yeah.
By the way, talk to me like I know nothing because I don't know anything.
Well, yeah,
I'm here to learn.
admittedly, I didn't know that much about it until I started researching for this episode. And one of the most fascinating things that I found is that it's like a lot of other things in Kuwait. It's a very entrepreneurially sourced field.
Huh.
In terms of, it took a while for the government to get into things, understandably, because we were still under the British at the time. But if you look at, for example, the first hospital to open in Kuwait, it was, as I'm sure you know, by an American mission here, a Christian mission here in 1912. It wasn't by the government. The government didn't come into things until about 24, 25 years later. And I think that speaks to our spirit as Kuwaitis, as entrepreneurs. You guys obviously with the Doctor's Brew. It's a cool parallel that I sort of managed to think up. But yeah, the first hospital was founded 115 years ago now. So there is quite a storied past. The first government hospital obviously then is Amiri, the old Amiri hospital. Yeah, the old Amiri, not the one you guys work at right now. There's an old...
There's an older Amiri than that one.
Okay, I didn't know that even.
I don't know, one of my friends once was passing by when I told him to come to Old Amiri, and then he's like, bro, I'm next to an abandoned building. There's no way you guys work here.
Well, that is so they say that one's haunted. I don't know if you knew this, but yeah, it's supposed to be one of the most haunted spots. Yeah, but it's, you know what's funny is that you told me to talk to you like you know nothing, and now here you are teaching us stuff. So there you go.
Actually, on the note of the government coming on board with this, I have an interesting little piece of information about the Americani hospital. So, when the missionaries were, doing their thing, setting up the hospital with the Americani hospital, now a part of Dar al-Athar Islamiyya. So that's one of the parts of the museum, the overall museum. So when the missionaries were setting up their treating and blah, blah, people were very hesitant, right? As you'd kind of expect from people. There was a lot of pushback from Kuwaitis, because they were like, who are these people just showing up?
Why are you building a hospital here?
Exactly. And then doing their like you need to put yourself in their position. They're coming in saying, oh, I'm going to use this liquid. They don't know what, I don't know. I don't want to say antibiotics. I don't know if at the time it was made or not, but they were dubious of the medicine, right? We could talk about how that circles back to now, but they were dubious, right? What got people to start accepting things? It was, I believe, the Emir's daughter at the time. She got sick, right? And she had some form. It was like an eye issue, ophthalmological issue, right?
Sure.
And then she went to the missions there, and then they restored her sight. They cured her, right? He then, because he trusted them, he then, of course, endorsed them, blah, blah. And then Kuwaitis themselves started following up in the Americani hospital. Now, where do I play into this? Interestingly, remember the youth medical forum last year? So I was at the keynote speech that I was giving, I brought up this story about kind of our origins, right? To kind of talk about our origins in Kuwait of medicine, etc. And then afterwards, I left the stage and went along with the rest of the event. And someone came up to me and said, that was my grandfather you were talking about.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Who your grandfather as?
The Emir.
The Emir?
Yeah.
Wow.
And she was telling me like that's my grandfather. That story is 100% true, because I was a little worried that this was just like an urban myth or something, because it's not like these are documented.
But it's funny because there's a reason why the voice of one person can affect it, right? Because the Emir tradition was our protector as well. So he organized the protection of Kut, the old town of Kuwait, the old fort of Kuwait, especially when there was aggression from maybe Persia or Iraq or the Saudis at the time. Don't know if you want to cut that later, but so this person became a trusted figure. This is our protector. Medicine is ultimately also, if you look at the 4 pillars of medical ethics, one of them is non-maleficence, right? And so if you're looking at that as a form of protection, all of a sudden the trusted authority is not the doctor, It's the Emir. It's the person who's been providing you with protection for years, centuries. So all of a sudden, then his blessing yields what you were just talking about.
I look at the profound impact it had. That's the introduction of modern day medicine in Kuwait. You know, so huge, huge.
That's a very interesting story. But you know what's my favorite part? The name of the hospital. Who came up with that? Americani.
Because they were American.
Yeah, this is the pronunciation of it. It sounds really cool. Americani.
You went Italian.
You guys are calling the hospital Americani.
I was in Americani.
Americani, maybe. And maybe they anglicized Americani to Americani.
Wait, hold on. So we had an Anglo name, American, but then we made it Arab, American, and then we went back to anglicizing it. So
We do it with everything. One it is the word for a truck. Yeah. It comes from like the phrase for something in the engine that's 1/8. I can't remember exactly what it is, but yeah, 1/8 is 1/8. I didn't know that. All taps into history, right? Like one guy calls it one thing one time, all of a sudden it becomes the gospel.
Everyone follows. Everyone follows.
yeah, okay, interesting. So, any other bits of information you want to share with us about the origins in Kuwait?
No, I just want to speak a bit more about that sort of bottom-up approach that was there at the beginning.
Yeah.
And the decentralized nature of it. I think when you look at like other aspects of Kuwait's past, for example, what did we do? We were pearl divers, we were traders, we were mariners, right? We didn't live off of our land as much as we did live off of our sea. And so people were out all over the place. And that made them self-sufficient because each boat then became its own society, which meant that people became decentralized. And so that made when they rely on themselves, that brings then that entrepreneurial spirit. So when they come back, they're not going to rely on a system that is, whether it exists there or not, they're going to rely on themselves. And so you see like local clinics popping up. You see the local doctor, right? The holistic medicines coming up rather than a clinic. Nobody wanted to go and open a centralized clinic where everyone could come in. No, they wanted to make it like the ship, their own little localized slice of land where it's medics coming in. So again, I just wanted to bring that into the story you were telling me about the Emir and sort of him being the figure that made it all centralized and all into one piece.
And then when did the public health department actually come into play?
Let me look at the notes because I don't know. Yeah, that's what I thought. Asmin.
Well, when did the public health department actually full on? Like now, like you mentioned, it's decentralized to the people. When did it start becoming a government initiative, healthcare?
So that happens in the 30s, in 1936. And that corresponds roughly with the discovery of oil around the Gulf and eventually in Kuwait. Because as these things come into play, oil, the world stage starts to become a thing, all of a sudden you're not looking at a project of wellness, for example, you're looking at a project of nation building. And within the nation building are institutions like medicine, because those contribute to the legitimacy of a government,
Right.
especially a new one. Okay, the Emir had already existing legitimacy, but to be able to provide services for the entirety of the population becomes a big part of that. And so that's why you see it happening there. It's not a coincidence that before that it was those localized efforts we were talking about before. No, it's now when it's needed, when Kuwait is starting to build its structures so that it can be independent less than 30 years later. Now you're having that centralized effort. It's worth mentioning before that there were private clinics, even public clinics, but nothing like a hospital, nothing like a public government department, nothing like that. This is the first steps of that.
But if they were decentralized like that, then you would have different treatments or different levels of expertise at each of these like different small clinics.
Yeah, and that's all part of it, right? And that's why you need a centralized system. And so the British helped bring that into place. They helped with those sort of first steps. And that's why you see, for example, we do have a public health system. Guess who else does? The British. They have the NHS. And so we modeled a lot of our stuff after them. Now, obviously, there's changes. It's been 60 plus years since independence, but the origins are similar. Yeah.
And sorry, I'm horrible with dates. When did World War II end?
45.
45, because I know for a fact, so the NHS started after 1945. It was post World War II, right? Or is it it's World War II? World War II. Okay. With the NHS, interestingly, it was a response to the World War. That's why, before it wasn't a public health system. And then that was the response was, oh, let's do the NHS. And then interestingly now, what I remember like hearing about in the UK was when I was studying there, how now Post World War II, the population has now doubled. You know, not doubled.
Look at Kuwait's population statistics, right? It's insane. It goes into nation building again. A nation is stronger when more people exist within it, more citizens especially contributing. And so this is all part of it, and this is all what we see historically. A country that develops itself by investing in its people is much more solid of a foundation than one that invests in protecting its government.
Okay.
You know what I mean? People who are taken care of then contribute to a country. And that's why something like a healthcare system, the way we have it in Kuwait, is actually a very solid foundation for a country like us.
That's why I do appreciate how Kuwait, there's a lot of efforts to between the scholarships for studying medicine and the ample opportunity. Like I'd say, access to becoming a doctor in Kuwait is way better compared to anywhere.
Definitely.
How much of that do you think is a population thing? Just because we are a smaller population, even though we're growing.
It's a small growing population with an abundance of wealth. So that would translate into better opportunities for the citizens.
I meant it in a competition standpoint. For example, I know in the NHS right now, they're having a hiring crisis, but at the same time, new graduates can't find work in the NHS. I've heard this firsthand from a lot of you.
And if we can, one thing that I would challenge with that is that now, since we're talking about the history of medicine here, medicine back then, right? Back then, like 70s, 80s, 60s, whenever you want to put any point of history, is very different to medicine today, right? If you look at for the USMLE, like the textbook to study for, it's called the textbook's called First Aid, right? Each year it's just thicker and thicker and thicker and thicker, right? So the thing is, medicine is ever changing, and what we do know, and this will actually lead us to the second talking point today, which is like a kind of modern state of medicine in Kuwait, is that medicine is very different now, and the systems that prop up medicine now, you can't really compare that to back then. So that also changes kind of the career opportunities, the career itself. So part of it is that people don't want to go into medicine.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting point, actually. Why do you think it is that people don't want to go into medicine?
Oh,
I guess that's maybe a topic for another day if you don't want to get into it.
easier answer. I have a good answer for that, but I want to know, what do you think? What do you think?
Why people don't want to go to medicine?
Yeah.
Because of what it looks like, what medicine looks like from the outside, from someone looking into it. It looks like a lot of hard work. Yes, there's a reputation and prestige with it, but also a lot of sacrifice. And a lot of people are not willing to do that, even if they can. And a lot of doctors too. So
I think this is a good way to blend into the next talking point, which is what has been the defining medical event in the past few years of the 2020 of that.
You said it yourself, didn't you? 2020.
COVID.
Yeah.
Right? So my response to why are less people going into medicine is look at how we responded to COVID.
Yeah.
Right. Medicine, first of all. I remember wanting to go into medicine because it's an apolitical career. I never wanted to go into something that was political or politically motivated or changed by political views, blah, blah. Regardless of your beliefs in COVID, there is no doubting that every aspect of the COVID-19 pandemic was politicized. Right?
Yeah.
So now doctors were not necessarily just, the doctors to help you, whatever. Some people saw us as saviors. Some people saw us as frontline workers who were amazing.
Yeah.
But they also saw
You were ambassadors for political sides, essentially, either a bad ambassador or a good one. But what's funny is it's not a new phenomenon. During the Spanish flu in 1918, over 100 years before the COVID pandemic, there was an anti-mask movement. There was an anti-vaccination movement. So it's not. I don't see those necessarily as a viewpoint of medicine per se. It's more about a reflection of human psychology, questioning authority, not trusting the sciences potentially. Obviously, those have gotten worse with social media, and you know better than that, better than I do on that front. But yeah, but it's not a new thing. And so I'm wondering, what do you think has changed now? Do you think it is social media that's kind of stoking these fires? Because obviously, this has been going on for a long time.
social media is definitely a big part of it, because now anyone on the face of this planet can say whatever they want, and anyone can hear or listen to it. Before, you had to have like a strong position. You had to have something where you're like either on TV, or you're a journalist, or you're writing on a newspaper. That's the only way for you to for people to hear your voice.
Yeah.
And if I could add on to that, you know, us as doctors, we are trained on how to interpret medical evidence, right? So like, if I just tell you, here's a study, read it. It's not gonna. It's gonna be a lot of it is gibberish, okay? Because there's what the study finds, and critically appraising it, then interpreting that to clinical practice. All these things are skills that you need to learn how to do, right? And we're trained to do that. And then even then, we need experience, years of experience. But the problem is that now all these sort of like all this information is very, very, very readily available compared to the 70s, 80s, when papers, studies, randomized control trials are in literal journals that you need to print and then order, blah, blah, blah. Only limited to academic institutions. Now anyone can pull them up, and there's a lot of misinterpretation. And then that gets spread through social media.
Yeah. I think so, sorry to cut you off. I think something else that contributes to it is with that permeation of information, you're finding about some of the shadier sides of medical history.
True.
Especially in the 20th century, nothing causes innovation like war. And when medical research in war often is very graphic and something that I can't really repeat online right now on a video. But look up, for example, Japanese Unit 731 during World War II. Look up what the Germans did to some of their prisoners of war. You're talking about things like live amputations. You're talking about injecting them with different diseases. You're talking about um, uh, autopsies while the patient is living, to sort of poking things and see what happens, right? People back then didn't really know about that or couldn't really know about it unless it was told to them. Whereas now, if you're feeling morbidly curious, you could find out information about that in 5 minutes. So I think that contributes to what you were talking about.
Absolutely. And I can just speak for psychiatry. The history of psychiatry isn't that pretty. And it's new. It's not even like a distant past, you know what I mean? Psychiatry has not always been a pretty specialty, even now. And I don't think that leaves. I think we all have the image of, for example, like electric convulsive therapy. Everyone has the image of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest,
Yeah.
right? Of someone getting tortured using ECT. When the reality of ECT is that it's under anesthesia. It's so bland. It has some of the high success rates in medicine, with lowest, complications and side effects. And I remember going to see ECT for the first time, and I was kind of let down. I had a bad design. You're expecting the movie, or exactly. But it was. I swear, it was just the patient was sedated, and then it was just a button, and they just went. And I was like, oh, where are the sparks? Due to some technical difficulties, we rerouted real quick.
Yep.
But we just spoke about electric convulsive therapy, and kind of the history of that, the psychiatry, and how it's actually like a super safe procedure, and how that's in the minds of people. But moving more into modern day medicine and the defining medical event that happened in Kuwait and around the world. What is it, Bassam?
COVID-19.
So talking about COVID-19, that was an interesting experience, and it really showed how Kuwait, I think, medically really mobilized. We all had a story that kind of interconnected.
Yes.
But tell us your experience as a patient. What was the medical system of Kuwait for you? What happened?
Actually, okay. So the first couple months of the pandemic, I went 2 months without any human interaction whatsoever, aside from on the phone.
We've all been there. We all had there. Was no, but he was locked in.
I was locked in, bro. I was doing the whole Aziz so I was quarantining at Aziz's place, because I was in a dorm and I didn't want to do lockdown in a dorm, versus a duplex. But Aziz actually went to the Emirates with another friend, because there was a rumor that the evac flights would go from there first.
For long, the biggest gamble I ever took. Friend is me, by the way.
It was you. You're the reason I was alone. What? No, damn, someone. You okay? Anyways, so yeah, cut a long story short, I experienced a lot of loneliness, so I could have used a psychiatrist, definitely. But by the time I got back to Kuwait, it was, I think, the 1st of May or the 30th of April of 2020. And just a quick aside, we're almost at the 5-year anniversary of COVID being declared a pandemic. So it's kind of crazy. Yeah, time flies. But it was like something from a horror movie, because as the plane was taxiing when we landed in Kuwait, there was a series of large tents, maybe big enough for 100 people each. And each tent, there was a window, and I could, as the plane's passing by, I can see like This tent has someone with their head back and the thing's going through their nose, the PCR test. The brain tickler. The next tent had, remember how uncomfortable that thing was? But they would shove it all the way up to you. You'd be tickling your brain.
Yeah, I thought they were gonna do a lobotomy.
I was ready for one after that. But anyways, then the next tent is people again in masks and I don't know what, like registering on the app with the selfies and stuff, immune, right?
The bracelet.
And the bracelet, the tracking bracelet. And then the next tent was like getting people situated in terms of getting their information. And I remember all of this. I'm seeing all of this, and I'm like this is something from a movie. Like this is the thing people make movies about. This is a huge event, and that's when I think it truly sunk in. Because I had been so locked into an apartment, so locked into a corner of just like doing my classes, hanging out with friends all digitally. All of a sudden, I'm like finally seeing it for the first time in person, that this is like a massive, massive medical event, probably the biggest in over 100 years. And so coming into Kuwait, I remember again doing 2-3 weeks of like room lockdown, and you'd see like, you remember people get 1 hour a day to leave the house. All of a sudden you just hear like clothes, you hear people walking outside. Nobody's talking, but you look out the window and there's just people walking. No, going nowhere, just walking. My family that lived through the Ghazoo all said it reminded them of that actually, because of how quiet things were. They said it was never that quiet since the occupation.
Well, you know what the pandemic really did was immobilize the Kuwaiti medical forces across rank and specialty and whatever.
That's something I came to appreciate a lot, because I realized like all of this is to say I realized the scope of everything. Because aside from this, you see, okay, 20 million cases is a huge number, but it's a number on a screen to me, to a non-medic. But to you guys, you lived it. You were in the wards.
I mean, you know, for us, we were definitely on the sidelines as medical students.
Yeah, since we didn't do much except waste resources by wearing the massive hazmat suit. What was it? It was so big. Yeah, it was a mask inside, and then mask over that, and then the suit. Every patient you go in, it was difficult.
But you know, I remember starting training year during in 2020, 2022, 2022. And it was like I remember I had a patient in the last COVID ward, and then 2 or 3 weeks after I started, it stopped being a COVID ward. And all the people above me, like the assistants who were trainees in the COVID era, they were like, the way they were speaking was as if they came out of.
Yeah, or every single one of our older colleagues is talking about the working in that. It's crazy.
But they were good. They were like, once you do that,
Because about anything.
Yeah, what level above is there than a pandemic? But you realize you guys are carrying, like, especially them, they're carrying a historic torch. You guys are carrying forward like a historic process, right? Because what's one of the most famous images from history is the plague doctor with the mask, right?
I want to get one of those for now, or like right now to go to Amiri with it.
50 years down the line, it'll be us with a normal mask.
That's true. And think about it, the 50 years from now, this will be the example that people use in the next pandemic, right? People will think of, what did we do during COVID? That'll be the playbook. Before this, the next parallel was the Spanish flu over 100 years ago. A very different world.
And scholars, like I actually published about this, was how a lot of our policies that we used was based off the outbreak of SARS in China.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah. So I mean, we could be setting the example.
Wow. Look at it. We'll only know if it's a good or bad example 50 years down the line.
All right, you know, it's weird. I don't know how to feel about it.
I mean, ultimately, we're all contributing to the lessons of the next generation. So you just do what you can, right? The plague doctors, I don't know if the herbs that were in the mask made a difference, but it meant that now these days we're wearing masks. So we build on the mistakes that people made before.
True. And okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about the modern era, you know, we've gone from a little random American mission hospital by the beach to a pandemic that mobilized the entire Kuwaiti medical force and the world, right? What's the future? So I have some ideas of what future of medicine will look like in Kuwait, but what do you hope for? As someone who's not in medicine, what do you hope for? What do you expect based off of all you've read with history?
Yeah. Hope and expect are different things.
Ooh,
Proud. there's a trend right now globally towards privatization, right? I think we've been lucky enough to avoid that trend. Kuwait still has a very strong social system for people. Obviously, you need insurance or things like this sometimes, especially if you're a non-Kuwaiti citizen. But ultimately, medical care is accessible, I think is fair to say. Yeah. Especially versus somewhere like the States. Um, I think that's going to continue. I think there is a certain altruism that is going to remain. It's the same reason that, for example, certain foodstuffs are locked in at, like, let's say 100 fils for a falafel wrapper. I don't know what it's up to now, but less than a KD, less than half a KD.
100 fils.
So there you go. There you go. Yeah, hey, this guy. Well, yes, the comeback is coming, huh? Okay. So I think the public sector is looking okay for the future, and I think the private sector as well is going to keep borrowing things from the outside. I think Kuwait in general, if you look at it historically speaking, has always tried to modernize wherever possible, and I think right now especially we've realized that in some instances we've fallen behind, and we're trying to play catch up, and that's a good thing because historically the first to move often makes the first mistake, and so we can learn from quite a few of our mistakes. One thing I do think in the future, though, is that human psychology is not going to change. So I mentioned earlier, during the Spanish flu in 1918, there was an anti-vax movement, there was an anti-mask movement. Over 100 years later, that stayed the same. The next pandemic, that's going to stay the same. The skepticism around medicine, I don't think will ever be something that goes away. It might become bigger, it might become smaller. It's always going to be there. Human psychology doesn't really change throughout the years.
I think that's actually the point about the future of medicine in Kuwait. The thing that I'm worried about the most is the intense skepticism is important in the sense.
You need skepticism to question things.
There's a quote by, I believe, Carl Sagan. It's one of my favorites. It's trust but verify, right?
I like that.
People don't trust, and then they verify with the wrong sources, or they don't bother to verify at all, or they trust the wrong, whatever it is. Yeah. And that's where the disconnect is. And okay, maybe it's education, maybe it's different programs to sort of build up literacy, health literacy within Kuwait. But right now, it's not there, right? People are gonna not change until something within the education system changes.
Said a word there that's important, a phrase, health literacy.
Yeah.
Right. And actually, for Kuwait Times, I did write about mental health literacy. Right.
Yeah, it's good article.
I think that it's something that's extremely important, that the Kuwaiti population improves its health literacy, because I think in terms of the doctors and our systems, we're improving objectively, right?
Yeah.
We shifted from, for example, our polyclinics were not being manned mostly by people who specialize in family medicine. Now
There are so many specialized clinics in every single polyclinic.
exactly.
Yeah.
And you can find mental health resources there. Even your hospitals are being filled with more and more, like all that investment in making our doctor, like sending them abroad, training them here in Kuwait.
Yeah.
For
And now all wax is starting to pay off, because now you're getting, with every single year, a humongous and increasing amount of doctors coming in. So that'll just continue to translate over the next couple of decades.
Exactly. Like back when we were going to med school, like at the start, the standard was if you're going to specialize, you're going abroad, you're not staying. It wasn't like I'd say, right? That was kind of the vibe, But now I think it's the opposite. Everyone's like, no, why would I go abroad? All the specialties are available here in Kuwait, right? So we're improving in that sense. We're not perfect, but we're improving. The one area that I worry about would be the patients we're serving. Are we communicating to them effectively? Are we increasing their health literacy? Because right now we're at a point where what we're fighting is actually like social media, the internet, right? And
And that's a war that no one else had to. No other doctors had to have this war. This is our war, this generation, and it's a very difficult war to have because there's so much misinformation. So you have to fight against all of it, while also educating yourself the right way.
and respecting the autonomy of the patient, because that's the difficult part, right? Because at the end, everything has proven how the model of the doctor knows best and the doctor just tells you what to do.
Yeah, very patriarchal system medicine whereby the patient doesn't really have a say. I think that's why in the NHS right now, right, there's the 3 questions that they ask them, right? You remember it better than I do. But what are your, what was it, ICE?
What was it?
Yeah.
I think cancer PTSD. Plus, there's an expectation. No one ever does. Yeah, like you do see it in Kuwait. It's just a different way of doing it. But I feel like that element is still there. But at the end of the day, because the health literacy I feel like is lower than usual, most of the patients just rely on the doctor's advice. So, what do you think? What's your suggestion? What's your advice?
So do you think in the short term it's more healthy to just lean into that, and if you know better, than just to tell them what's better?
I
Or
think it's important to have a mix of both. So you'd want to give the advice, but at the same time, you want to tell the patient to do their own research, to go read up, go to do this. What I like to do is like for in orthopedics, when a patient comes with a sprain or a minor injury, I'd like to tell them to go on YouTube, look up the physio for this. I give them the injury name and look up the physio and do different exercises because these things can help, and these things are things that patients have to do by themselves.
And I do hope that also in the future, looking at the future of medicine in Kuwait, mental health specifically, I do hope that we're heading towards an area, a space where we're no longer stigmatizing mental health.
That's a big one, yeah.
That's a big one. That's a big one.
Especially it's very difficult with our parents' generation. It's very difficult with our parents' generation, and mental health. It's a challenge.
So those are kind of a few points on the future of Kuwait, right? Medicine in Kuwait. So we have two last segments that we want to get through before we wrap up today. You told us that you wanted to give us two truths and a lie.
yes.
Tell us more. Tell us more.
Please explain to the audience what the two truths one lie is.
Okay. So this is two truths and one lie, brought to you by ChatGPT. Okay. So I've taken medical issues. All right. So I've taken two true medical stories and one generated by ChatGPT. These are all to do with self-operation. So a doctor performed an operation on themselves. So this is for ortho. Okay. All right. So I'm going to read them to you, the three. Okay. You guys can talk amongst yourselves which one you think is true, which one you think is false. And then you guys are going to guess. Okay. So the first one. In 1960, Leonid Rogozov was a member of the 6th Soviet Antarctic expedition. He was the team's only medical professional. Several weeks into the expedition, the 27-year-old surgeon noticed some of the telltale signs of appendicitis: fever, weakness, nausea, and significant pain in his lower right abdomen. Drugs were not improving his situation, and so surgical intervention was needed. At 2 a.m., after medicating himself with local anesthetic, he made the first 10 to 12 centimeter long incision into his abdomen. After around 30 minutes, Rogozov became weak and needed to take regular breaks, but he persevered. His self-surgery was successful, and after 2 weeks, he was back to full health. Okay?
I think this is true.
Absolutely true.
I know. There's a picture. I've seen a picture of this.
No, 100% true.
And he was literally operated himself.
Three. I'm not going to say anything. All right, number two. In 1915, Dr. Elias Carter, a member of Ernest Shackleton's expedition across Antarctica, was forced to amputate his own foot after developing severe frostbite. With no chance of getting to a hospital, Carter recognized the infection that was spreading. Facing a life or death decision, he used the station's limited medical supplies, including a bone saw and ketamine, to perform the procedure himself. Despite severe blood loss and unimaginable pain, Carter managed to cauterize the wound and prevent fatal complications. That's number two.
Now, this sounds like a plausible story. It makes a lot of sense.
100%.
You're in Antarctica, you get frostbite, you have ketamine, it's anesthesia.
Something that is correct there.
The rising infection. I wrote this. I summarized everything, even the ChatGPT one, so that it wouldn't sound ChatGPT. So this is from a non-medic. Okay, last one. A 40-year-old mother of 8 was carrying her 9th child. Vibes. Living 8 hours away from the hospital, she was Octomo. Living 8 hours away from the hospital, she was forced to deliver at home. After hours of unproductive labor, she was concerned that she might lose the baby. So, in an attempt to prevent this from happening again, she decided to perform a cesarean on herself. Using a kitchen knife, there's new way. It's jokes. The procedure took 1 hour, and after 10 days in hospital, she recovered fully.
Wait.
That's so easy.
No, it's a kitchen knife to open up her stomach. While she's pregnant, there's zero.
No, and three cuts. 3 cuts.
Yeah,
No,
it's this.
Absolute cap.
If this is actually true, I'm fucking out right now.
I hope it's okay.
So, the first one is true. Bassam, you know the picture I'm talking about. The guy's lying down. So one of the other two is false, right? And I can reveal that Dr. Elias Carter did not exist, did not have frostbite.
the story again. Repeat.
Which one? Which one?
The woman, obviously.
So a 40-year-old mother of 8, I'll put the source on the screen as well. A 40-year-old mother of 8 was carrying her 9th child. Living 8 hours away from the hospital, she was forced to deliver at home. After hours of unproductive labor, she was concerned that she might lose the baby, so in a desperate attempt to prevent this from happening again, she decided to perform the cesarean herself. So she used a kitchen knife, she opened her abdomen, the procedure took an hour, and after 10 days in hospital, she recovered fully.
I have questions. Is she a doctor?
No.
No. Is there a second question? Second, we missed. This is why we didn't choose this. We missed a very important detail that she said. What? In a desperate attempt for this not to happen again, which means this is what we missed. We missed the desperation. We missed the limits of human.
Brother, that was true. That story was true.
I know, but that was just that's why you didn't believe it. Because when someone is desperate, sure they will do anything.
History, baby. Look up the survival story of Ernest Shackleton. That's why I mentioned that guy. These guys tried to walk across Antarctica. They got lost, and for over a year, basically grinded their way from where they landed in Antarctica to a tiny island off of Argentina. Managed to get on a lifeboat to go to a town to get help. Brought it back. They came back for the rest of their crew over the course of a year, and they all survived. In 1914.
Did they make a movie about this?
They should if they haven't.
This is exactly how Bassam survived his jumping out of the plane. Well, you shocked us with that one.
Yeah. I had a feeling you'd fall for it.
9 kiddo. We want to go into our final segment of today, what we call the final sip. Usually our guest is a doctor, and then we have them look into the camera and talk about an impactful patient experience, right? I think we selected like you selected a Kuwait Times archive piece that is quite impactful. And so for today's final sip, do you mind showing the piece and sharing it with the...
Sure. The one thing is I don't want to have any coffee on the table, so let's get them away.
That's good for me.
And okay, you're gonna see me get one archive book, but I'm also gonna get 2 other ones because in the beginning I said that everyone that comes here gets 2 gifts. You already gotten the first one with the first edition, but the second one is you get to see the day you were born in the newspaper.
Oh.
So I'm gonna get all the books right now.
Awesome.
So I'm gonna put your birthdays in front of you. So this book is for February of 1998. But we'll get to it. We'll get to it in a second.
This book is as old as me. This is heritage.
This is June 1998, and this one is January of 2012. And so this is one that OGs of the Doctors Brew remember a few months ago, maybe even a year ago almost now.
Yeah.
We did an event at Beit Abdullah's Children's Hospital, Catch and Batch. And so the issue from the archives that I want to show you is the day that opened. Actually, Aziz was there. You were singing there, right? For Kwai?
Don't know if I was... No, it was... all right, wait, show the thing first.
I'll pull it up. Tell them the story.
So basically, when Yousef was bringing up the opening of Beit Abdullah, and they brought kids from lots of schools, and I was one of those kids that was standing along and kind of like
Populating, you had a nice voice as a kid, didn't you?
I wasn't singing. I was waving at Bess. My dad would often catch me. If I ever sang along to a song, he'd just look at me and say, "Oh, did someone tell you your voice was nice?"
That's cute. Oh, that's cute. I thought I got like a little wholesome.
He was like, "You think you got the singing thing? You don't know.
Just smile and wave.
You think you got it? You do not got it. Okay.
This is scary opening these books, to be honest.
I'm going to show you guys first, and I'm going to show it into the camera. This is the opening of Beit Abdullah, the inauguration, actually. Go for it. Oh, yeah.
We don't damage. You want to tell the audience kind of the significance of Beit Abdullah?
So Beit Abdullah is actually the only dedicated children's hospice in the Middle East. Here in Kuwait, it's located in Slaybakhat, right?
Yeah, literally across from was outside.
So it's actually like I brought up the focus of altruism within Kuwaiti medicine, and this is basically the most pure example of that because the people there are amazing. The facilities are incredible, world class. They have a Ferris wheel, they have multiple games rooms, they have gyms, a theater. It's incredible. If you ever have a chance to visit or support their work in any way, shape, or form, I can't recommend it enough. But this is what it looks like within the archive of the Kuwait Times.
Oh, very honestly proud moment in Kuwaiti medicine and history. Palliative care is something that's extremely important. We should also put a link to the article that I wrote about palliative care and our event, because palliative care is just so overlooked, its value in healthcare overall. People think that it's only for the last few days, but it's so essential. It is truly a humanitarian, specialty. I applaud everybody who works in palliative care, and Beit Abdullah. The work that they're doing for the kids is phenomenal.
See? You guys finish each other's. Yeah.
You play too much sounds too much time together.
And so, yeah, proud moment in Kuwaiti medicine and Kuwaiti history, and also a very proud moment in the history of Doctor's Brew, because I think that's probably one of the highest standard events you guys ever did. I was still part of Doctor's Brew at the time, so I hold great personal pride as well. And yeah, the work they do is, what was the word?
No.
That's what all right. And right before we wrap up, you guys have in front of you 2 books I know you're really excited to get into, so go ahead. You guys know the days you were born.
Yeah, because this looks scary.
Folks, he did it. He opened it right to his birthday. That's Malayalam. So that's the language from Kerala in India. So we used to print in other languages.
Straight to my, I don't know how I opened it straight to my birthday. Oh, look at that. Oh, that's okay. I got some medical news, but it's not. British heart surgeons barred after baby's death. Not the best medical news I want to hear about. No, on my birthday. Okay. Well, what's the front news saying? Let's see.
Were newspapers this big back?
Bigger. They trimmed them a little bit to fit in the book.
Oh, I don't know where. Oh, I'm getting close.
Closer. You're at the very front of the book.
Otherwise, I started the back.
Guys, it's Bassam's birthday in 2 days. So everyone put happy birthday in the comments. Yeah.
Well, it's gonna come out after that.
Yeah, this episode's coming out after that. So
Belated birthday.
Belated birthday.
Let's show. Oh, this is my. Or that's front page on my birthday.
Oh, you got some football stuff.
Yeah.
What is that?
Galaf readies another bomb.
No, the picture, man.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the same thing? Okay, cool.
And let's see.
Just careful with it.
Oh,
we can put a insert. Okay.
oh, awesome.
there's just a lot of murder on my birthday, apparently.
Bassam, show the people your front page at least. It's right there. Yeah, you got it. Yeah.
There we go.
There we go. Awesome.
It's a woman and her son, and they're holding a gas mask.
We'll put it on screen.
Okay, I'm scared. Should I try? Should I help him? What when you help together?
There we go. On to do.
Very important day in history. What's the gas mask story?
So actually, funny topic. This is non-medically related, but it is history related. After the liberation of Kuwait, the whole 90s were filled with a lot of fear about the Iraqis trying to go for round 2.
Yeah.
And so there were border skirmishes, there were air raid sirens and stuff like this. A lot of foreign troops in Kuwait to protect the country, and so I think what you're seeing is part.
Yeah, it says here that this woman is explaining to her younger sister how to use the gas mask in case of an emergency, and that there's a rush to obtain these gas masks.
Yeah. We never had remember in 03 when there was the sirens and stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, that was freaky.
We need to bring back the popularity of newspapers, to be honest. There's a beauty to like actually.
Yeah, absolutely.
We really lost that in the modern day. Anyways, I don't want to deviate. We're going to be here definitely even after this episode looking through this stuff. Yousef, thank you so much.
Thank you guys for having me.
Really, it was great. Just a final take-home message for everyone watching. Remember that our history shapes our future, right? So that's why we wanted to do this episode. We wanted everybody, I hope lots of young Kuwaiti doctors are watching this so we know where we came from and be proud of where we are, but also know how we're going to move on in the future. All right, that's the last sip of coffee for the day. Thank you to our guest and my co-host.
Thank you very much, guys, and we'll see you next week.
Subscribe to Doctor's Brew.
And subscribe to Kuwait Times Archive.